Today, I'm lucky enough to have Ben Shaw in studio with me. Ben, thank you so much for coming through and having a conversation with me.
Pleasure.
I've done a little bit of research about you, and I think in your very young life, you've achieved a hell of a lot. And I would like to just unpack that today. So I think as a starting point, let's go back to school days, if you can tell me a little bit about that, and we'll just unpack your story.
Sure. Well, thanks. It's great to be here, and I look forward to discussing parts of what has felt like a busy life. School was great. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I was at a boys' school, Rondebosch Boys in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, and it was a great place for me. It was very competitive. There was an opportunity to get involved in sports, culture. It was a very academic place, particularly in the latter years of high school, and I quite enjoyed the ability to kind of meet and mix with a variety of cultures, different people, different personalities.
Did you play any sports at school?
I did, and I quite enjoyed all of the traditional sports, so cricket, rugby, and a couple of others that I dabbled in, but not well enough to say I played. And that kind of transitioned. I guess I was part of the generation moving towards computers and video games. So also started with Esports, I think it's now called, which we used to just call LAN parties, which was good fun.
That we'll dabble in a little bit later because I have no clue what esports is all about. So we'll touch base on that. Academically, how strong were you at school?
Strong enough to get to UCT. I can't recall or can't off the top of my head tell you any aggregates or performance, but I went from Rondebosch to UCT to do business science, which was a very traditional southern suburbs route. So business science, finance and accounting, and that was a great time studying and learning. I was fortunate enough to be part of the Allan Orbis Foundation, which I know we chatted on briefly before this, which was also just a magnificent opportunity, one that I probably needed in order to afford university at the time.
How did that relationship start? How did you hear about the foundation?
Orbis Foundation. So we had and I think still does, Rondebosch has an excellent careers, life orientation sort of aspect to schooling, and it was one of the scholarships and bursary programs promoted to us. I don't know how many of my class would have applied, but I was one of X. And that's quite a rigorous process. You go through, I think it's 3 types of application, written, verbal, there's in-person interviews, then there's a selection camp, which is 2 or 3 day affair, which was a lot of fun, but no sleep, lots of project work. And then through that process, you're part of a pretty elite group, or certainly a limited number of students that have these scholarships attached to their studies.
And I guess that's where some relationships already start forming for you to then go to UCT, and then after UCT building some businesses, which we'll talk through. So obviously they then gave you the sponsorship or the scholarship to go into UCT. You went into the BCom Sciences, and then what happened from there?
Yeah, so in fact, in a place like UCT, your class is so big that without the sort of the community that was built in Allan, I think I would have met far fewer people, ironically. It was great to have that sort of concentrated group of people who'd meet regularly. But I did finance and accounting. I started a couple of businesses even through the university years, none of which are worth too much mention now, given what happened to them.
And what type of business? So industry type, any fintech type thing?
No, nothing so adventurous. One was a recording business. I would mix, or I would rather remove vinyl records, scratches, and convert it to MP3s onto CDs, which is ironic because now a lot of people want the vinyls back. So that was a service business.
And sold it to your mates at university.
I should have. That one I didn't. Another one I did, fortunately, not for a very large sum, but it was effectively a university blog. It was called Varsity View, and we would do all things related to students, written by students, but particular interest areas. And students enjoyed being involved because they could showcase a competency, but also they could be seen by peers as a bit of an expert on a subject.
So I do have some insight that you like rap. There's a few songs as well that I know in your book, The First Kudu, you mentioned. So Many Men, from 50 Cent. Is there any chance we could get you to maybe do a little song and dance for us?
I don't know. That career path has sailed for me.
Yeah.
Maybe just an insight into that. I've always really enjoyed or been drawn to the culture around rap music, and I appreciate it's not common to hear someone like me talk about that, but the hustle culture, or particularly the subgenre of gangster rap for all its flaws, it is really built on the sense of the underdog having to perform. And so lyrics that stand out for me are ones that are about that burden of struggle, embracing suffering or a difficult period of time, and then coming up on top. And so I've always been drawn to that. And artists like 50 Cent, I'm sure known to many people, but the backstory of these guys is fascinating. The same with Dre. I remember in my first job, one of the sort of, I guess, the privileges of working late was you could put your own music on right into the night, and it's a good genre to keep you going. That's exactly right.
So after university, where did you then go?
So I was on the CA route, so I studied finance and accounts, and then instead of doing my GDA, I was offered the opportunity to go and work at an investment bank. There were probably only 2 or 3 opportunities I would have taken instead of doing my CA. JP Morgan was one of them.
Yeah.
So I went to work there, which was a really fantastic experience. I think investment banking in general has a lot of opinion written about it. And certainly there are negatives to it. But if you go in and you walk in with your eyes open, there's just so much to enjoy and appreciate and learn. And so it was a very, very tough time, but also a fantastic learning opportunity. So I really enjoyed it. I was part of the M&A team.
Yeah.
We did coverage in sub-Saharan Africa, and being an international bank, it gave you the opportunity to engage with colleagues across the world and to spend time in offices around the world. So trainings in London, spent time in New York for a few months, which was just for I wouldn't say a small town boy, but for a South African,
How was your experience in New York?
On reflection, very good, but at the time, very difficult. I was saying, for someone who's grown up in South Africa, and my parents are in education, don't really have a history of being in business. Certainly, never been to a city like Manhattan. It was really quite a big step,
a
big adjustment, and we were there for an extended period, so several months. And I think if I had made the jump to live there, absent investment banking and the lifestyle of investment banking, I think I could have maybe done it. Or if I'd stayed as an investment banker, but not in an environment as intense, I probably could have sustained that for longer. But together, I found it quite overwhelming.
I think investment banking, and being at such an incredible firm like JP Morgan, there's so much learning, so much opportunity. I've heard that there's a lot of mentorship structures that you could find yourself within a team that just helps you grow and develop. So how did you find that?
So I guess there's 3 strands of mentorship that you've got there. You've got sort of technical training and sort of your own personal progression through what they view as analyst 1, 2, 3, and then it's quite a linear ladder: analyst, associate, VP, ED, and then you can get promoted beyond that. So in that sense, it's as fast and as quickly as you can learn, you can kind of progress, but you're supposed to be moving up year by year.
Okay.
Mentorship outside of that really is at your own volition. You need to establish relationships with your associates who are senior to you and with your VPs. Okay. And I found that really enjoyable after about a year. Like your first year, you're just kind of a bit deer in the headlights. So my third sort of facet to that was finding a few mentors who are outside of the bank, and just talking through business with them. How do you do this in a first job? How do you make a good impression? What do you do to actually navigate situation X, Y, and Z? And those mentors have stayed with me since then. It's been really wonderful.
How do you think that then transitioned from leaving, and talk about like why you then chose to leave the investment banking space to then start up something in South Africa, and why you then came back home?
So it's a lot there. The short answer is I didn't leave because I didn't enjoy it. I left because I thought I had an opportunity so compelling that it pulled me out.
Okay. And
the story behind that, which you referenced the First Kudu, and it's here, is the story of HouseME. And happy to sort of dive into that?
Absolutely.
So HouseME was conceptualized while I was still at the bank as the formation of two discrete ideas. One, efficient market hypothesis. That's all we do in the bank, is to make the markets more efficient.
Yeah.
So that was always there, and I was trying to apply it to my rental agreement because I didn't know what to pay, my landlord didn't know what to pay or what to ask for. We kind of just agreed on a number, and I had no idea whether that was fair enough, but it's what it was.
Yeah.
I thought that was strange. And then secondly, I had a very meaningful experience with a friend of mine who, for effectively because of the color of his skin, couldn't find a rental apartment in Cape Town. And it really
signed. In the book you said he had signed, and then the owner then found out who this person was and then actually retracted the offer.
And I could not believe it. It was so far outside of my experience of the world.
Yeah.
And so that stuck with me. And HouseME was born out of those two ideas. And the initial concept that I worked on was an auction that allowed tenants to bid on what they were willing to pay to rent. And landlords then were bound by the final offer. They couldn't retract it. So that would solve the two problems that I thought were identified. So to answer the question, why did I leave? Because after about 2 or 3 months of working on this after hours, which for an investment bank is,
between 2 and 4 in the morning.
It's quite late. I had a health crisis. I ended up in hospital, and the doctor booked me off, basically said, look, your body can't sustain whatever you're doing. He didn't judge me on it, I suppose, but he said, you've got to think about this quite carefully. And I flew down to Cape Town, met a few of the mentors, said, look, this is what I'm thinking. And they were pretty unanimous in saying, you need to take the opportunity while it's here.
Were any of those mentors able to then start funding? Because, in a startup, funding is everything. Watching cash flow and just being able to put bread on the table is key. So how did you navigate that?
So exactly right. So one of the strongest commendations you can get from someone who says do something is, listen, do it, and I'll fund you to do it. Yeah. Which was exactly what one of my mentors said, which was incredibly kind, and also I think a hell of a motivation for me.
How old were you then?
I don't know, about 24, 25 maybe.
So still really young, like wet behind the ears, no real commercial experience or running a business. And what did that entail? And now you've got a mentor that's backing you financially.
Yeah.
There's a bit of pressure there.
Yeah, a bit of pressure. But also, and I've come to appreciate this more post-HouseME, it's a good time to be trying something new, because you need a risk profile that kind of says, well, I don't know what could go wrong here, let's just try it. Okay. And that's harder to do the more responsibilities you have in life and sort of the further along your career path. Nonetheless, at that particular period of time, it was a massive decision, and one I don't regret, but one that has led to a very different sort of path and some of my colleagues.
So in starting that business, do you want to just tell me about some of the struggles, some of the great opportunities that came from there?
So the first thing to say is you can read the book, but I know that you have. I think that the real principle of entrepreneurship is sometimes miscast, and I've listened to several of the interviews you've done, and I think it's a theme that a number of your entrepreneurs have shared, which is that business isn't as complicated as people think. You're solving a problem that people are willing to pay for you to solve. And when you think about it like that, what HouseME was doing was creating efficiency for landlords and helping tenants feel validated, heard, and safe. And I stand by the principle that is a good business to build. Outside of the commercial, it was something that I was proud of working towards, and that the team that we could build were all excited to help, help solve. So when we talk about the challenges of building it, there was never a vision challenge or an ethical reason not to do it. It was often just the sheer bloody difficulty of building a company. And you mentioned cash flow. I think investing in technology in South Africa is still, but was at the time, very challenging. And we came up with a sort of a black swan event in COVID, which you may recall actually shuttered the rental market for a period of time, where tenants weren't allowed to move, landlords weren't allowed to cancel. I mean, it was a once in a lifetime sort of event. So those were some of the challenges, and we can dive in if you like. But it was really, it was a wonderful business to be part of.
How did you build that business? I know Carl joined you first up, Was he the brains behind the, building the tech stack behind that?
Yeah, so maybe just to take a step back and say what HouseME was. So
Yes.
I mentioned the concept started as this auction. What we developed as a business model was a disintermediation between landlords and tenants, such that we could replace an agent.
Yeah.
That was really the thesis. And what we try to do is remove every single bit of human intervention by replacing it with technology. Now, that is not a unique playbook, but in residential rental in particular, it's a very complex process. And a good example that Lorne writes about in our book, and I'll introduce him, I suppose, as part of the story, is if you consider an Uber ride, and Uber is one of the most successful apps ever built, there's a limit to what can go wrong. You might get picked up in the wrong place, or the guy might be a block away. He might get dropped 50 meters different to what you thought. The guy might be late. Perhaps there's another passenger in the car. There's not a whole lot outside of the experience you expect. That's drastically different for a landlord and a tenant. And you're dealing with the emotion of someone's home or someone's investment property. And so the level of care around each part of the decision stack is so significant that one of our assumptions that was difficult to sort of validate until we built it was we can build technology that will make the user comfortable enough to adopt us. And that's really where Kyle's expertise was superb, and he was the CTO. He joined as a co-founder, and so the two of us, he and I, for the first 6-12 months, I think we're really just building and doing as much manual sort of research as possible.
Where did you meet Kyle?
He also studied UCT, although I didn't meet him there. He was an introduction through a network that I reached out to, and we connected well. In fact, when we met the first time, we were both working on different businesses, which I really appreciated because it was very easy to get on with that mindset.
And I think it's when setting up a business, you need to find someone that you can trust and that kind of partner. So, meeting him for the first time and then jumping into a business, you have to earn that trust really, really quickly. And I think because you guys are working on two separate things at the time, I think the time and effort that was committed after hours into this business, I think that's where there was some alignment and synergy.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm not in a position to advise anyone, but I think the things that worked really well in looking for a partner, certainly your senior team, if you extend beyond your initial hires or two, is you need people that you can trust. Absolutely. You simply can't spend time and effort worrying that someone's going to do something not in the best interest of the company. You need someone with a skill set that's diverse and it extends your ability to perform. And you need someone who's willing to put in the work. To tie back to the culture of rap, one of my favorite set of lyrics from the Compton album from Dr. Dre speaks to this fear being a powerful motivator, and that he wakes up feeling that in order to perform as well as the next guy, he has to put in more work than the next guy. And so in order to excel, he has to and he uses the word kill. I don't think I can say that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to be better and work harder. And one of the things that the two of us said to ourselves in the beginning is we might not succeed, but the only thing that will be unacceptable is to fail because we didn't put in effort.
Yeah.
And so long as we do all we can, then whatever happens, it's a success for us because we'd have learned and tried it and given it a good go.
How do you scale that business now? So it's the two of you. You need some structure and procedures in place to then build that business. You need. I know there's a story in the book where you went and handed out flyers.
Yeah.
Talk through that.
Yeah, the flyers was an interesting endeavor. That was us scaling into the Newlands car parking lot and dropping off flyers to talk about HouseME and what we could do under the windshield of all cars, setting off alarms, getting chased by security. So we were very
innovative.
I guess that's a more positive word.
Yeah.
But you're right. So we needed some structure. So once we, and I guess to link back to where we were, so Carl and I built a prototype. We also did a lot of manual work testing the rental, because even if you build a product, you have to deliver the property, and we needed the property. So we had a few of those done manually, almost as though we were the agent. And then we started migrating that into technology. And as soon as we did that, we could build systems, and we needed to really make that efficient. And so our first few hires really came in to help us build systems and to build organization around it. And when you scale, which came for us a bit later, a lot of the processes have to have already been ironed out before you can replicate them. So that was what we did, I guess, for the first year or two, and we raised capital there. So other than for the seed capital we had from Mentor and our own kind of contribution, we then were able to raise some funding in order to then get that first product released with a set of processes and systems in place. And that was maybe a team of 8 or 10.
Okay. When does Lorne, so Lorne was also meant to come and have a conversation with us. So I'm going to hold him accountable to get in front of this camera. But when does Lorne come into the business?
So Lorne was also an Allan Gray Fellow. I mentioned getting to meet some of the network through UCT as a result of the fellowship, and he was one such fellow, in fact, in the same year as I was. And we'd stayed in touch through our careers. He was in consulting, I was in investment banking. And so when I left the bank, he was one of the first people I reached out to and said, listen, I think this can work. And, what will you give me some feedback? What do you think? And he said, well, it's interesting, but, come back a bit. I think he wanted me to prove out a bit further. Yeah. And so a year or two in, when I felt we had done that and we'd raised some capital, we connected again. And the need for the company at that point was not just to optimize our systems and efficiency, but to remove management time from doing client engagement and hiring and a lot of things which I guess you'd call in a bigger company sort of the role of a COO. Yeah. At the time, it was just another person. Yeah. But that was what it morphed into. And so Lorne became our COO, and he and I wrote the book really from those two perspectives. I had a lot of that early few years kind of jack of all trades, master of none, and he would come in and bring much more optimization systems and thinking on what the business could be if we had the systems built correctly. And that's really what we try to bring out in the book. What is it like building a startup, but also what is it like for different people who have to now work on the same project? Yeah.
So it's now built, I know that you had grown to probably 26 employees at the time. Structure is critical then. Culture of the business, what was that like?
I suppose you should ask the team. It's hard for me to give an answer that's not biased. I thought it was an excellent culture, but I would say that. Okay. We had a lot of fun, and you have to offer fun and transparency and opportunity for people to do things they wouldn't otherwise do relative to another job. And why I say that is because we couldn't offer competing salaries. We don't have benefits. We don't have fancy office space with free parking and all the things we'd love to offer. We just didn't have that. And so we could sell the promise of getting there and we could incentivize to it, but you had to give something else. And so what we really made a big effort to do is instill the softer skills and benefits of a very positive workplace. We had mentorship programs for everyone. The senior team, including myself, would meet one-on-one with absolutely everyone, including interns, once a quarter. We would have the board come in and meet all of our investors come in and meet our staff. We'd have finds evenings, which we took out of the book. We didn't want to talk too much about that, which was actually a really great thing. We allowed juniors to sort of give almost informal feedback on what they thought wasn't working. Yeah. And that was super helpful. So that was kind of how we built the culture, I think.
So very inclusive, and built, I think what you're trying to describe is that, very inclusive, making sure that people can grow within their space and probably a comfortable culture where people, feel that they are supported in their journey.
Supported in their journey and I think also challenged. I think that was the other thing. Okay. We were very big on the fact that you've got to be comfortable with uncertainty. Okay. Because you're buying into an uncertain outcome here and we need you to navigate things that not even we know. Yeah.
Majority of your workforce, what was that? What did it look like?
Under 30, in fact, probably under 25 for parts of our journey. And then very, very powerful, competent seniors, I think, who could manage that level of kind of junior employee. Demographic was wide, languages were wide. I mean, it really was, as you say, as inclusive as possible. And also because of the mission of the company, which is really to democratize and make safe renting, we wanted to be able to offer that across the board.
What happened subsequent to that? Like, the business was going really, really well, and then you made a decision to close its doors. What was the catalyst to making that decision?
So tough question to answer. And part of the reason that I think some of what you've read in the book is interesting, because Lorne and I come at it at different angles, and I don't want to repeat just saying, COVID was the reason.
Yeah.
That was a massive part of it. So a bit unlucky. But the reality is, until you're profitable, you are dead. That's what it is. You're dead, absent sort of lifelines from funders, and that was still our position by the time we hit COVID. Now, we were at the time we were on track to run or to launch a Series A fundraise, and before the lockdown, we had actually secured more than 50% of that round, which in my mind, and we disagree on it actually, in my mind would have then seen the company through that last period of risk and through to sort of growth. But, and I agree with Lorne on this, it's not a helpful narrative for founders to say, well, if I just had more funding, it would have worked. I mean, that's true then of any business. And so I think a couple of the lessons we've pulled and what we've written there in the second half of the book is, well, what would we do differently? What was a focus area that perhaps we dropped the ball on, so to speak?
And what were those?
Well, they're myriad. I think that the ones that stand out for me, that we didn't centralize our data fast enough.
Okay.
So that meant that we had quite a lot of management time and effort and sort of senior skills going into cleaning up things that we would have built differently. So that's maybe on a data and technology layer. I think another piece was we were so reliant on funding that we didn't kind of just stop to say, well, where could we make this more sustainable? Probably less of a factor, given that we were a B2C scaling. Well, I mean, there's only a couple of playbooks to run there. And then I think probably a more meaningful one is we really loved complexity. We launched a great number of innovative products, but too quickly. So we were offering a rental guarantee, we were offering deposit-free renting, we were offering subsidized deposits, we were offering photography, viewings, key handovers, inspections, all because we want to compete with the agent, but perhaps in sequence, done too quickly.
Okay.
These should have been, and again, my perspective is these should have been recoverable. If we had gone through to the Series A, I think we would have right-sized.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
What did you love most about the experience?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think anything stands out as the top thing. I think overall, the opportunity to lead a company to solve such a massive societal need is really impactful. And I think...
And making a difference.
Making a difference. And then the second thing, which is maybe more of a personal mission, being able to employ people in this country is such a privilege that I never lost sight of that. And wherever we could find an extra work for an intern or hire someone, we tried, and maybe that was a mistake. But I think that was a real point of pride for the company to be able to impact not just the people we hired, but their families. Yeah. And then, of course, the tenants and landlords.
What happened to HouseME?
So we, post-COVID, realized that we weren't able to complete the round. And so our options were either to continue to trade but get closer and closer to death, or to sell the book and sort of, in other words, to hand over our leases to another agency and at least have our clients looked after and take the remainder of the money to sort of wind down, I wouldn't say perfectly, but with some level of payout, which was the option we went for. I know that you're framing it as a choice. It didn't feel like it at the time. You must appreciate it. If a business has gone through that, and we'd gone 3 or 4 funding rounds deep, we're not the only decision makers. Now it's reputation of directors and shareholders, and everyone sort of wants an outcome that makes them comfortable. So I think it was the right call. But
how many employees did you have at that point in time?
Well, look, at our peak, we were at about 30, 35. And we had, because of the nature of the funding, we had already pared down quite significantly. So at the time of wind down, maybe 8 or 10.
Okay.
And then...
But also it's so important, and I think you speak about it, that just the networks that you had, you were able to then, place people in different positions to make sure that their jobs were secure somewhere else.
Candice, one of the bits of advice that was given to me, and I repeat this I throw it out at founders all the time, which is if you're not comfortable with the possible negative outcome, you shouldn't start something, because the inevitable, it's 9 times out of 10 it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to be comfortable with that. And so in some ways, I'd played out this situation far more than I'd played out the possibility that it would work. So it became well, if this happens, what do we do? Okay, we extend the network, we make the introduction, and we kind of just execute that playbook. What makes it difficult is at the time you're emotional, you're exhausted, you're frustrated, you're disappointed. But it actually wasn't as, the execution of it wasn't as stressful as I think I had imagined, or certainly I'd played up in my mind for several months.
I know this is probably something that most entrepreneurs don't speak of when businesses do fail. What made you get through that? Because you could go into this depression because something that you had thrown everything into hasn't worked. What happens post that? So you come to the realization, oh my gosh, something that I've started is not working. You wake up in the morning and now you need to pull yourself towards yourself to carry on. How do you do that?
I can't answer for anyone else. I can tell you what it was for me. So I had that year that the business, we realized that was going to happen. I just got married and I was involved in a car accident. My car, so I lost my car, my business, and I've just become a husband. So it was a tough year.
Yeah.
It was really, really hard, and I can't wish it on anyone. So on to answer it for myself, I have a very strong relationship with the Lord, and so leading on my faith was critical. Couldn't have done it without that. The fact that I was newly married and had a partner through this was tremendous.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think I could have managed or coped without it. And then I think you've got to remind yourself throughout your entrepreneurial journey that your own journey is not the same as the company's. That runs counter to a lot of how I built up the company in the beginning, where your own brand and the company's brand is the same.
Yeah.
So that kind of separation took time, and that was including the work of a psychologist and doing lots of I used to call it physical therapy, but exercise basically, where I could go out and think on a run or go to the gym and just have nothing to do but think and be by myself. So that kind of was how to process it. But in some ways, it's still with me. And I don't think it would be appropriate to just let it go and say, well, it was fine. I mean, it wasn't and it's not. And if we could do it again and get it right, I would.
Absolutely. So after that, what was next in line for you work-wise?
I'd been approached, so to come back to investment banking, the natural path for most investment banks is to go into the investment side. And I'd chosen to do banking because my ultimate goal has always been to be working in private capital markets.
Yes.
I had, even through university, taken time to go visit Silicon Valley, to go meet some of the VCs, to study from Andreessen Horowitz to the Drapers, Sequoia Capital, all the way through to our founder fund. And I've been given 2 bits of advice. Either if you want to go into VC or that sort of investment cycle, either go investment banking MBA, that's one route, and funds will hire you, or be a founder, exit, and then you're an operator.
Okay.
So I kind of tried to bridge those two as I went. So what I do afterwards, so while I was still actually at HouseME, we were doing very well. A PE fund approached me and said, look, we're interested in setting up something slightly more early stage towards tech. Are you interested? And I turned them down. I said, no, thank you, but this is going to work. Why would I do it?
Exactly.
And they then reached out to me again when the business was
post-COVID, okay.
Post-close, and said, look, I think you should join. And I actually, to their great credit, they stuck with it. But I said to them, actually, I'm just exhausted. I can't commit to this for a bit. And so I took a year doing contract work for a payment technology company as their chief commercial officer, and then joined the private equity firm. So I'm now at EXEO Capital. Okay. And EXEO is an alternate asset manager. We invest in sub-Saharan Africa. We do about $300-400 million under management, so mid-sized. And my role there is looking after some of our private education assets, some of our early stage technology, and a few exciting initiatives which at the moment haven't been unveiled.
So the private education space, explain that to me a little bit more.
Yeah, so actually most of my time goes into it at the moment. Yeah. Under EXEO, we own a holding company called NetEd, and I serve as the M&A executive there. I guess with all that I've kind of gone through the last few years, it's a really fun space for me to be in. And that company is is building out a path for private education in the higher ed space. So think of a private university, and one of our assets is Eduvos,
Yes.
which is growing really well. And we really want to make sure that there's access to education available, not just from the publics, which are increasingly under strain, but through credible private sector providers who are actually able to place graduates. I think that's maybe a point to make. HouseME was built because of a thesis on a social ill to resolve. At NetEd, our principle is Africa is too rich to be poor, and the lever to solve that is education. And I really get behind that. That is, I told you, my parents are both in education. I mean, that resonates with me.
Yeah.
So it's a great privilege to be part of.
I think when you're building businesses, always, you need to be mindful and quite humble in, what you're trying to build. So you spoke of having jobs for employees and their families and being able, for them to provide for their families. And I think it comes down to communities and, maybe CSR projects and things like that. And I think the schooling thing and education links quite nicely to that.
Yeah, and impact isn't always through your non-profit and social arms outside of a profit company. Sometimes it's making decisions that might reduce the profit of the company, but actually benefit society. So one of the metrics, or two of the metrics we track religiously is what is our graduate employment rate? In other words, are we just making money from students that then don't have a job, or can we help them get a job? And how are we priced? And oftentimes we're better positioned in both of those than the equivalent public, which should actually be holding sort of a less profit-minded standard than us.
Are there any specific sectors that you focus on?
So within the higher ed space, we're looking accredited and vocational, and then in the technology and early stage space, it's a bit broader, mostly digital infrastructure, platforms, or ed tech, which you can see would link.
Yeah. So I know you said that you played a bit of sports at school, but then you got into the e-sport thing. And for me, I have no idea what e-sporting is about. My son said to me the other day, Mom, I'm going to go play FIFA against another school. And I was like, sorry, what? Tell me a little bit about esports. What is your favorite game? What do you do? How much time does it take of your day? I'm pretty interested to hear.
Yeah, esports, I'm not a very good esport athlete or role model for anyone trying to do it because I just don't have the time.
So you're not getting paid for it?
Oh, no. I would have to pay them to watch me, I think. Esport is, generally speaking, a term for electronic sports, and it goes across a number of gaming codes, titles that I'm sure some listeners will be aware of, anything from Roblox and Minecraft done at a stage and on a performing platform, through to Tekken. My personal favorite is Dota 2. There's Counter-Strike, League of Legends. I've
heard a few of them.
You'd be surprised. I mean, FIFA is a good example as well. And then you get mobile games, which are sort of PUBG and a whole bunch of others. What's interesting is that interesting and worrying, depending on your perspective. You've got increasing reports on how lonely the generation is, how difficult it is to socialize, how insular, and how much information is sort of barreled towards your young developing generation. And there's some great work done by John Haidt, actually. It's called The Anxious Generation, where he speaks to the negatives of smartphones too early. But esports is not... It's not that. It's you being able to compete on a platform with friends, typically in a team, against another team of similar strength. And I've enjoyed it because I've always been competitive. It's probably a theme of all of your interviews, of everyone that you've talked to. And you need to keep the competitive streak alive. I've got colleagues who do endurance races, colleagues who bench 200. And, you got to find
heated does that game become? Like, are you shouting into your mic?
Absolutely. And so I play very socially. I'm not a part of what's called a clan or an organization. But the echelons of sport are now so professionalized that you have organizations that are across the world competing for millions of dollars in prize money every few months.
There's a World Cup on currently, and
the esports
will be there's an Olympics.
So it's just been certain codes have been pulled into the Olympics. So it'll be the first time, I think, in 2.5 years with the Olympics, that there'll be an esport component to the Olympic Games.
You're not in the running for that. Eh?
I'm not in the running for that. Maybe as a I don't know, as a commentator or a cheerleader. what's interesting, what's so wonderful for me is that quite a lot of the work we're doing at Eduvos is positioning some of the students for that, because of course that's what they're doing. They're competing and playing, and we have a league called the Vossi League, and that's enabled students to come in and play, not professionally but semi, I guess, competitively across the landscape. And it's a growing market. So some stats on it or whatever, we're looking at a multi-billion-dollar industry. Gaming now, video gaming is a larger and more lucrative part of media than movies.
Wow.
And just the score on a game, so just the instrumental and the music, is contracted for more than the scores now on your blockbuster.
How amazing.
Releases. So it really is a fascinating space on a business level.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as a player or as someone who enjoys it, it's a lot of fun. And I think you're also seeing, last comment on it, you're also seeing the acceptability move beyond the nerd into now it's quite, you'll go to perhaps not in all generations yet, but you'll go to watch it at your friend's house, or you'll have a party to watch the final, just like you would in another sporting code. And there's some games that have a viewership of over hundreds of millions concurrently watching a live stream. In Korea, in South Korea, for the Football World Cup, for FIFA, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before, in order to motivate the players, before I think it was a knockout game, the sport minister of South Korea brought in the esports players to give the motivational.
Are you joking? Wow.
So it really is a new discipline and sport code which is growing.
I know we spoke, pre the podcast just about AI, and I know you love to read. I know there are a few books that you referenced in here that you read. I think the one was it's something about the hard things. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Ben Horowitz.
Yeah. And talking about AI, how has that impacted the business and maybe the PE firm and education?
Well, this is another whole podcast. I don't know how long you want to go, but
exactly.
So AI isn't. Well, let me start differently. There's two kind of hats to wear in how we're looking at it. The one is how do we invest into companies that are AI first, and I've led an investment into a company quite recently that has a very niche vertical. They've developed a product that goes quite deep into that vertical. It has access to proprietary data, and so we're treating in this investment cycle, we're treating AI as an enabler to a virtuous business model, rather than AI being the product and being the virtue, which if you're interested in the thesis, I'm happy to justify. On the other hand, and what I also spend time doing, is we apply artificial intelligence in our business processes and our day-to-day job. And that, I think, is actually a much larger opportunity for South Africa than having a thesis on which product or business will work, simply because we're in a transition that I would liken to the adoption of mobile or even the internet. It's hard to sort of see the wood for the trees, but the reality is that we're undergoing a change in access to tools.
Yeah.
And so long as we are equipping ourselves to best use them, we'll be fine. But we need to do the equipment.
Yeah. One of the things that blows my mind is, even at my children's schooling, is that they restrict them from using any sort of ChatGPT or AI. And I'm like, surely they should be enabling children, to understand that, how to use that ethically and responsibly. How do you find, that, and what is your opinion on that?
Well, there was research that came out, I think, only 2 weeks ago from it was either Stanford or Harvard, one of the top US schools, I forget, sort of decrying the use of AI and the fact that it makes brain function worse. So that's sort of on the negative side. There's also very positive studies to saying, look, your efficiency goes up by X%, and therefore you should do it. I think AI, and I feel in some ways a bit sorry for the generation that's now learning on first principle thinking, because AI just makes things so much easier to do. But if I think back, I had to do research projects using Encyclopedia Britannica. And now you just Google it. It's a tool, and so we need to be able to identify how best to test the use of that tool and to test the thinking behind it, rather than to rely on the answer. There's been some very interesting, just in the assessment game, there's been some very interesting technology that's come out that offers the ability to extract from someone's answer the AI source, so almost reverse engineer it, And if a certain percentage of it it's higher than X or Y or whatever, then it flags it. That's interesting. Another use that I heard of sort of enabling AI, but carefully, is you're able to use it to answer questions, but the school implements I don't know what it's called, a wall that will purposefully put in 30% incorrect into the answer.
Okay.
And that means that the user has to still know the content well enough to pick out which 30.
Smart.
Those are the innovations I think we'll get to. Ethic, moral conversation, I mean, it's probably, again, a whole nother conversation. In principle, I think our concerns should be on the use of proprietary data. I think that there's a lot of unknown there. And there's a difference between LLMs and LMs, which I think people should be more educated about to understand where data is safe and where it's not. And then I think picking your provider matters. So as much as we want the model to perform as best as possible, I think there is a difference between picking a Grok or a DeepSeek versus ChatGPT or Gemini. I think that the privacy laws and restrictions are meaningfully different.
Let's talk about that from a business perspective. So obviously, even in the company that you're at now, you need to make sure that you have proper process, policies, procedures to protect the company from that. And have you had involvement in setting up policies around AI?
We're actually undergoing that process at the moment. So the short answer is yes. I don't know if you want me to dive into anything.
Go into it, because I think, people want to hear what they need to be aware of, where there's risk, and it's any employee going onto ChatGPT and that information is leaked out and you put confidential client information in that.
So I'll propose a thesis and get your feedback. I think it will be easier to understand how to use AI if we consider AI as part of the HR department.
Yeah.
And my reason for that is because if you are considering considering AI, or let's call it a tool, Claude, Gemini, whatever it might be, if you're considering that an employee, you treat it very differently to it's just a workstation or it's just a tool on your computer. And if you think about it like that, I think we'll automatically put in the correct safeguards. You wouldn't give your intern access to certain information. You simply would check that they are doing the right calculations. You do all the things that people are saying, well, we must be careful with that. Well, we do that anyway. We're just not thinking about AI as that persona.
And having a disciplinary inquiry for the AI tool.
That's it. But you need to do that. And you need to have...
Interesting.
If you think of how long it takes to train a new employee, that is how we should be thinking of training a model. But people shortcut too quickly to the sort of the shallow... And look, it's impressive, but that shallow level of understanding that AI can give you, it sounds like a great answer, and it's well calibrated and well articulated, and absent the context, absent the instruction, it doesn't work. So what are we doing? We're doing training. Okay. We've got external providers coming in. We do internal work. We are educating not just on the use of the tools, but the risks of the tools. And then, in terms of what would other businesses do, I think it's very worthwhile trying to map the job you need done with the most appropriate and most safe tool to do it. And that mapping exercise is really enabling. It actually enables your staff to feel that they're not going against the grain, they're actually performing their job better.
They're empowered to do what they need to do,
Exactly.
One of the things that you had mentioned in your book, and it's the last couple of pages of the book, is your UCT CFA challenge. And I think you linked it to wanting to go and win. You're highly competitive. Tell me about that, and then maybe just the link back to HouseME.
Yeah, so the CFA Challenge is a university-level event where if you are selected as part of a representative team of a university, you compete regionally and then continentally and then ultimately globally. And the team I was part of in my final year of studies managed to win the Africa leg, and so we were competing internationally. It was in Milan, the tournament, the final. And the CFA Challenge, as you know, the designation, it's analysis of a company. I think our company, if I recall, was MTN, and I remember it was a buy. That was our recommendation for a whole bunch of reasons. And we thought we did a really great job. And it was one of the few, I said I'm competitive, you've pointed out, it's one of the few things I really cared about winning. Because you can be competitive, but you can be quite rational about it. And I would like to think I'm quite rational about losing things that in the end of the day,
you deserve to win. It's like we should have won.
This one, oh man, we could have. We should have perhaps. And I just remember that waking up the next morning just feeling lost, and for a very silly reason, because
the sun will still come up tomorrow, and you need to just carry on.
And that perspective was important. And I think at the time, you've just gone through. In some ways, I had a lot of tailwind. Being able to afford to go to university, I had the scholarship. I'd get into a big bank, representing the country in a tournament. And then suddenly something goes wrong, and it was, I wouldn't say the first time, but it was a meaningful loss. And the link we make in the book is to a much different and more extensive degree, but that loss of the company later, it was a similar feeling. It was that next day of disbelief and sort of processing, and a feeling of having let an opportunity slip, which, when you're competitive, is just it's a bit of a disaster.
I always say though that when you fail, it's how you pick yourself up and continue. And I say to my guys that are writing their board exams and they don't make it, you're not going to be the first, and you're definitely not the last. It's how do you come through this now? And I think for me that's a big sign of like a strong character, and making sure that they can pull themselves together and continue.
Yeah, just that's the rap culture that you're referring to.
Exactly.
Keep hustling, keep going. No, I think you're right. And I think perspective helps. And I think also maybe a piece of advice which I would have probably not listened to, but I now give to more people, is you need to have more than one thing in your life, so that when one goes down, and it will happen. For me, it was been Arsenal the last few seasons, disaster.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
You can't have your whole life on one or two.
So you're going to support Chelsea or?
No, we're not going to go that far.
Okay.
We're always going to win the league next season, as someone told me.
No, maybe when you're like 40 or something. Yeah.
Let's hope it's not that long. Yeah, no, that's so having that perspective, I think, was a good lesson, even as early as that.
Absolutely. So you said that you were married, and that got you through, a bit of a crisis in your life. I know you've recently become a father to a little boy. How's that changed your perspective on what is success and, what is important in life? Because I think when you're running a business and you go through a bit of failure and then you have a child, perspective definitely changes. How was that for you?
Sure. I'm not sure that it's changed as much as maybe the perception might be. Either that's because I was well calibrated before, or it's because I'm still catching up. One of the two. Yeah. The reality is that I really enjoy what I do, and so the opportunity cost for not working or not I guess performing or getting opportunities to build is high. Okay. What has shifted is the motivation is now far greater and more acute. Now it's not just building because I enjoy it; it's building because this is what we do as a family. This is protection, and this is the responsibility of to provide or whatever you say. I think the other thing is your timelines change. So now it matters to me where the country goes. It matters to me what community we build and what school systems look like, because it's going to be affecting my direct family. And that's been a good reminder of the value of work to society.
Would you go back and do a startup again?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
I think that the opportunity has to be right. And I think in some way, I feel very privileged to be doing that now. Yeah. Although I might not be the majority owner or the operator or the CEO, the relationships we build with our investee companies is such that we are genuinely partnering them. And it's one of the reasons that after due consideration, I picked EXEO as a great place. So EXEO's business ethos is to partner with business and to build, to build value that allows the thriving of various communities, not just a shareholder. So I really back that and I buy into it. And it's what I wish in some ways had been more prevalent in my journey at HouseME. And so I want to be that partner to other entrepreneurs. And that means I get exposure to many startups and can be part of those journeys in this way.
So I think with your experience, it's given you so much exposure to how businesses run now, obviously, different industries and different sectors. Has anything come from that? So I'm sure they've read this book, they want to reach out to you, they wanting to start something. How's that engagement been with people?
It's actually been a lot of fun, I must say. And I mean, this is a good case in point, getting to meet wonderful people, hear the stories of how our lives are being affected, either what our business has done or what their business is doing, and could learn from what we did wrong or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So I get some really fantastic messages from all around the world. In fact, our very first audiobook download was in Jamaica. Someone in Jamaica listens to our stuff. And I've got a small startup in India that regularly wants to meet to talk about how they're going to build their property company. So that's been fantastic. And giving back into the ecosystem is a big motivation and a driver for why we wrote this. This is not a commercial sort of project for us. We really want to say, this is what we learned, this is what we got right, this is what we got wrong. And that's been a very good enabler for conversations with a number of entrepreneurs. Mostly they reach out on LinkedIn, but also via our website and via the firm.
And how much of your time is spent on that type of engagement?
I do a lot of after-hours stuff. I don't have the capacity during my day to.
So you're still pulling a 15-hour day?
Occasionally. I guess that hasn't changed much, but now I just do some of it doing nappy changes.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's really a great privilege for someone to say, look, can you help me with this? And then to be able to do that and give them an opportunity to build the next thing or to hire the next person.
I think that's quite fulfilling as well, to be able to give them that insight. So I'm wanting to acquire this business. Can you have a look at the financials for me, where they maybe have no idea what they're looking at? Yeah.
So actually I get approached to do that quite a bit, do some valuations, particularly in the startup world. Valuation, again, another whole segue here, but valuation is very difficult for a variety of reasons. And what I've worked on for a while now is a model called the MSDDM, so a multi-scenario dividend discount model. It's a derivative of work done by guys in Norway, and I'm actually working with a professor at UCT now to see if this is potentially more scalable than just to what I apply it to.
Yeah.
But the thinking there is you're able to model out typical venture returns across a portfolio. You use portfolio theory for those who care, and then you can actually extrapolate that rather than up. You can extrapolate it down into one company, and that's it's a very balanced way to look at risk pre and post investing, and also pricing. So you're saying to an entrepreneur, look, even if your value is here, and you could be right or wrong about that, your pricing is here. Okay. So that gives you different information to make a decision, acquiring or selling. Or
and the timing of that as well.
Exactly. And so that information has been great. And then, as you say, sometimes just connecting people, helping out where I can.
That's what you love. How long did it take to write this book?
It's probably about a year. The editing was actually longer than the writing because both Lorne and I felt, we'd written great stuff, and then we'd read each other's and say,
no, go back. Almost like your first job, where I think one of your bosses said, are you sure this is the report you want to submit?
That's right.
Okay, I'm taking it back. Let me go and relook. Okay.
That's it.
Did you have lots of fun doing this?
It was good fun.
Almost like some counselling for you. Hey?
Yeah, it was. I can't speak for Lorne, but certainly some of the chapters that we wrote and then retracted before it went to vote was good. It was good to get out. I enjoyed it, and I think also it's a skill and a competency that we both have enjoyed doing independently. So to come together on a project, I mean, not many people get that opportunity. Yeah, really fun.
And so also to reflect on what could go wrong or some of the positives. So I think...
And on the positive, I think it's also worth, I don't want to miss the opportunity to say, I don't know how many startups go through the cycle we did and still maintain the relationships we have.
Yes.
Which has been a huge, it's a reflection I've only had sort of more recently, but it really is a privilege not just to have worked with some of my ex-colleagues, but to still have these relationships, still look at projects.
Really good friends.
It's a unique and very gratifying sort of privilege.
Absolutely. So I think in your life, and thank you for going into such detail of what you've experienced, if there was someone who was wanting to start something, what advice would you give them?
It's always, it depends. But my the thing that I repeat the most to the most people, I guess, is are you building something that will compel a change of behavior that someone will pay for? So in other words, is someone going to pay you to change their behavior? And that's a hugely high hurdle.
Yeah.
And that is what you have to hit. And if you can't articulate that, then work more on the idea. And people are very worried to talk about the idea. They think people are going to take it, but that's if you and I both have the idea for a hot dog stand, we're going to pick a different corner, a different brand, a different price, execution is 9/10 of the job. So share your idea and make sure that it's compelling, and people will pay for it.
And I think also you need to have passion for what you do. You need to be able to put in the hours. It's not easy. It takes time and effort. And I think you are a prime example of just the effort that's gone into it. So Ben, I really appreciate your insights today. Thank you for coming in. Next time we'll make sure Lorne is on the couch as well. But thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Candice. It's been great.